As was said the other day, if we can take the stories that have been told of late as true indicators, it has to be said that before we can know that we know and know that we have the proper authority, that there are several requirements. And the stories seem to have gleaned for us that one of those requirements is that we have to be tested. Another is that it has to be the right time. And the third is that we have to be able to know what it is that is there for us when this is completed for us. And that's a state of selflessness, desirelessness. But we can ask ourselves, what is it that's there when we do know that we know and know that we have the proper authority? And there have been several anecdotes about Divine Mother that have been cited, perhaps as examples on which we can base our further inquiries. And one of those anecdotes was that the messenger came to her and told her that she'd been chosen to take the power of Ramakrishna. And Divine Mother always said that this power was the power of the light. And she would often say, when the light goes in, the rubbish comes out. She was also told that the power would not come all at once. But there came a day, and this is important to our future inquiries, when during the harmonic convergence in 1989, Divine Mother called all of the followers from all over to gather in Hawaii, and she stood up on the stage and stated in a voice that was firm, unlike the quavering little voice that was always there for her, I have now ascended into spirit, and I can no longer come down. So as we explore what it is that is there when we arrive at a place of knowing that we know and knowing that we have proper authority, and before giving it a name, we start our exploration with an old story and a question. And it's the story about that farmer who kept a flock of sheep, and he had 3 sons who tended those sheep for him. But it was begun to be noticed that people were seeking the milk of one particular sheep, because it was found that that milk had not only healing properties, but the properties that seem to enhance people's lives, bring wealth and well-being to them. And so it was noticed by the sons and the farmer himself that this milk came from a particular sheep that each day when they were taken out to pasture disappeared and would come back in the evening when it was milking time. So it was decided that it must be explored where this sheep went when it disappeared from the flock. And so the eldest son took it upon himself to follow the sheep when they were put out to eat the grass. Now this sheep, having a bell around its neck as did the others, led the eldest son to the opening of a cave, and he followed the sound of the bell into the cave, and it wasn't very long before he came to a cavern, and when his eyes adjusted to the light, it seemed that before him, before his eyes, there was a lusty maiden. Now the eldest son was of that virile kind and was a bit of a womanizer, you might say. So when this beautiful maiden started to dance and be alluring and seductive before him, manhood was aroused, and he was about to embrace this maiden. But just as he was about to do so, she disappeared. But by this time, the sound of the bell of the sheep had also disappeared, and he had to return to his family unsuccessful. The sheep came back, as it always did, filled with the wonderful milk. But then the next day, the second son said he would go and follow the sheep. And so he did, and the sheep led him in to the same cavern. But he was able to pass through the cavern where the lusty maiden was. But this son was an achiever. He wanted to be rich. And so he came to a cavern and found that it was filled with gold. He was overcome with greed and tried to fill his pockets with the gold. But when he did, it seemed that as it came into touch with his garments, it disappeared. But so too had the sound of the bell of the sheep. Again, the second son had to go back and say that he'd been unsuccessful, although the sheep came back with its udder full of milk. So it was the turn of the third son to follow the sheep. Now this son was somewhat of a scholar, somewhat of a dreamer, a thinker. So he traversed the cave, the caverns, with the maiden. The gold did not allure him or seduce him. But then he came to a cavern where, in the dim light, he saw an old man standing at a lectern with a book opened in front of him. And the old man waylaid the son, quoting from the book an ancient passage of knowledge and asking the son what was its meaning. How would you understand this? Trying to draw him in to debate about the meaning of this passage. But the third son, listening to the sound of the bell, heard it beginning to recede in the distance, and politely took his leave of the old ancient being and hurriedly followed the sheep along the passageway until they came out into blazing light, into a place that had never been seen before, beyond the sun's imagining a place of richness, prosperity, well-being, harmony, and many more. He was almost overwhelmed by what it was that he was experiencing as he looked around. And then within him rose the desire to bring his family, to let others know of this place, to be able to share the wonders of what it was that he was experiencing. But when he went to find the opening to return along the passageway, to return from whence he came, he could not find any aperture. There was no way back. So he had to remain in this place, continuing to experience what it was that was there in this wondrous new existence. But he could not go back from whence he came. So the question that arises for us before we move on to explore what it is that's there is, what is it for us? What is it in you that allows you to know that you cannot go back to where you came from? That it cannot go back to the way it was. What is this place of knowing that we know and knowing that we have the proper authority? What is it in us that recognizes without an iota of doubt that we can never go back to the way it was? That all that's left for us is to remain in our place and explore its surroundings and what it reveals to us. What is it that brought finality for you? To know this without a question of a doubt. It's done. I can't go back. Can we recognize it? Certainly we can. And there's no doubt that life brings evidence of it. When we try to do things the way we did them before, when we try to go back to the old belief systems, or the old conditioned way of behaving. Isn't it?